Hey everyone, this is Jeff Mueller, Doctor of Physical Therapy. Just wanted to post a little AMA on injuries. Posted it about 40 minutes ago on Twitter. Figured I'd dive in now. This is pre-recorded; it's not live, so I'll post this on YouTube. But some really good questions. Just wanted to touch on, and yeah, hopefully this gives you some good information. And again, some of these are Wednesday injuries. We don't have a ton of information yet, so some of them I may not even have good information on them yet, but they'll be good to talk about. Scott Barrett asked me a couple questions. I'll talk on them first. He did ask Kenneth Walker. He kind of asked what the foot injury could be, and ironically, Zach Charbonnet. I'll talk on him too because a lot of people are asking about him. Now Charbonnet is dealing with a foot injury. We don't have details yet on that, but I'm hoping to get some information tonight or tomorrow morning, or at least tomorrow. We don't always get concerned about Wednesday practices. A lot of these veterans get rest days, and they're listed with a little soreness here and there. Wednesdays don't really matter as much as Thursday, Fridays. So hopefully Charbonnet can practice Thursday. But the team didn't mention anything coming out of the game on a Charbonnet injury. But on Kenneth Walker, he dealt with a foot injury that they slow played it through pretty much all of camp and off season or preseason. And just the way they were talking about it and the way they're still seemingly managing his workload, it to me, again, we have no specifics, but to me, it makes me think he's either dealing with a midfoot sprain, or plantar fasciitis, something where not a high grade sprain, but something where workload repetitiveness can increase symptoms and cause a little more soreness that he would have to manage. And it really comes down to managing the workload. And you can play through that. There's probably going to be some pain here and there. There's probably going to be some days where he has a little more symptoms. Maybe he doesn't practice, but then he's able to play through. Maybe he gets injections before the game or they tape him up. But I'm not overly concerned on that. The main concern on Kenneth Walker is his overall biomechanics, his movement patterns, how he moves. As we know, he's dealt with a ton of groin injuries, soft tissue injuries, ankle injuries, lower body injuries. That's his main thing. So obviously, it's a little concerning if it is something like that, like a midfoot or plantar fasciitis. Just the fact of like, how did that happen? How did it pop up? There's always a reason. There's always a cause of these symptoms, even if it's well managed. But I do anticipate them managing him for at least the first month of the season, and hopefully it doesn't rear its ugly head, and he can avoid future injuries. Because week one, he was non-existent almost, and week two, it's almost like he's bipolar. He's just top notch in missed tackles, forced yards after contact, a bunch of metrics where he's like top of the charts, and he looked phenomenal on like 50% of the snaps. So I'm not too worried on him long term, and he would be someone good luck buying now, but yeah, he'd be someone if he has some dips here and there. As long as there's no true injury setback, I'd be trying to acquire. Brock Bowers, Scott asked about Brock too. He suffered a mild left PCL sprain week one. He was able to play week two, 7 or 8 days later. And I shouldn't even say he was more of a decoy, but he ran, I want to say he still ran something like 70% of the routes. But obviously he struggled lateral movement, trying to create missed tackles. There was one where, it looked like Amari Hampton out there. He just could not force a missed tackle. And Brock Bowers is known for forcing missed tackles. He was top of the charts even in year one coming out of the tightrope, which oftentimes we see struggles there. So I do expect Brock to still struggle a little bit, but it'll probably take maybe 2 to 3 weeks or so for him to really get back to 100%. This was a mild PCL sprain. If it was moderate, grade 2, he would not have played Monday night. And he would definitely not have played as much as he did. So good sign, no indications of any setbacks. So I think he will, snap percentage increase, utilization increase. And the hope is obviously Geno plays better. Honestly, Brock would have had a much bigger fantasy day if Geno hadn't missed 3. There were 3 passes that I can think of. One to the left hash, one to the end zone. He almost scored a touchdown, and then one on the right side where he just missed overthrows, one underthrow, one hit the ground, 2 overthrows where he could have had him. And Brock honestly probably could have scored double-digit points, but instead didn't. So week 2, I do anticipate better numbers. I'm not overall concerned on him, and I think he did avoid any setbacks in week 2. There was one more. Oh, Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed So bad news for the short term. Honestly, good news for the long term. So Jaden Reed had surgery for to fixate the fractured clavicle, and at the same time, he also had the Jones fracture surgery. So clavicle alone, it would have put his time frame at 6 to 8 weeks return to play. Minimal concern upon return to play. This, and typically on average closer to 8 weeks or so. Jones fracture, on average for a safe return with very low re-injury risk, minimum of 10 weeks. So I've seen some information on people saying like, oh, he could return in 8 weeks. I think that's pretty aggressive. One, on the timeline of a Jones fracture, you can really run the risk of a refracture there, or complications from the hardware, just irritations, just not quite ready yet. So I do think closer to 10 weeks, not 8 weeks. Plus, looking at Green Bay typically has a very conservative staff with med team on return to play from injuries. So I would anticipate Jaden Reed coming back closer to week 12 to 14 range, probably late season. We might get him for fantasy playoffs. And honestly, production-wise, there shouldn't be a huge dip, maybe 10, 20% dip. But Reed, if he's going to play, we know the role he's going to play. He's still kind of a better best ball guy, boom bust guy. But I do anticipate pretty good production, especially in his role out of the slot. Schemed up touches. I do anticipate him having a decent chance at producing for us in fantasy playoffs. So if you were wanting to acquire him and stash him for maybe a hopeful fantasy playoff, you never know what your team's going to look like. You might look at your roster right now as like, I don't need him. But why not stash him? Why not acquire him right now if he's cheap? And especially because his production has been inconsistent, the manager may just want to get off of him. I would look into acquiring him and stash him on IR, and then see if he's able to return and produce. Because you never know, you might need a wide receiver come week 14, 15, playoffs. So, and then going into dynasty, right now that news actually puts him on a great dynasty buy low list. So I would try to acquire Jaden Reed. Good news, again, long-term. Very low re-injury risk and complications coming off those Jones fractures. So it's actually better that he had it done versus him trying to still play through that injury. So going into some of these comments, someone asked, Bobby Northern asked, can you look at Brock's practice footage and let us know if you see him favoring anything? I think he's talking about Brock Purdy. Brock Bowers, I didn't see any footage, but honestly, I already talked on Brock Bowers. You're playing him week 3. I think he's going to produce better. Brock Purdy, Grant Cohn posted a video of him throwing and doing a couple dropbacks. I still don't know if it's his right foot or right toe. Technically, it's turf toe, right, or his left foot. Honestly, by video, it looked like his left foot was pretty stiff, and it wasn't. It looked like he wasn't necessarily wanting to push through his first ray, his big toe. But I saw 2 reports that indicated right big toe, right turf toe, but nothing has been confirmed. So if it is his right side, one, I'm optimistic, especially based on the video I saw today. He was going through drop backs. He was actually getting a little bit more dorsiflexion through his first ray and ankle and pushing off that toe. And when he's throwing, he's actually tapping his big toe down, kind of his part of his throwing mechanics. He would throw and he would tap down his big toe into the turf and then kind of just follow through. If it's his right side, which would be more complicated for throwing mechanics, just being able to push off that toe and generate some velocity into your throws. As a throwing athlete, if you're right-handed, you're going to be required to press through that right big ray more than your left side, so that's good. There's still concerns, obviously, scrambling, pocket navigation, all of that. But if it is his right side, I think it's got to be pretty mild, to be honest. And that it fits the time frame of just the fact that he's back in practice. And again, he wasn't doing very much, and I think the Niners will be very conservative with him. There's no reason to rush him out. Honest gut on this, gut opinion, is that the Niners keep Brock Purdy out for week 3 and play Mac Jones. Arizona's missing 2 of their top corners and their top safety, I believe. So the entire secondary is very depleted. Sorry, my foot's falling asleep. I don't see any reason why the Niners would rush Brock Purdy back out there, especially running any risk of re-injury. even if he could play, if it's mild, he could, in theory, get back onto the field wearing a plate, metal plate in his cleat to minimize stress on the big toe. You don't want too much stress going through the joint as he goes into dorsiflexion, and the metal plate would block that. So he could play through that. But with how Mac played, with how the O-line played, and again, the secondary injuries for Arizona, I have a gut feeling they're going to run with Mac Jones week 3. And then Brock Purdy probably returns week 4. So we'll see about that. But again, the Niners always can surprise me. Kyle Shanahan surprises me. Everyone hates on him for injury stuff, but he's honestly pretty upfront for the most part. And if a guy is ready to go, he's going to get thrown out there. If Brock seems nearly ready to go, Brock's going to play. So we'll know by Friday. I have a gut they're going to run with Mac Jones. But there is some re-injury risk. But again, everything has indicated it's low grade, mild, with a plate in there. He'll be fine. It should run the very low risk of re-injury, especially with what I saw today. So that was good to see. Any long-term concerns for Joe Burrow's new injury besides being on the Bengals? Yeah, so, I mean, his play style on the offensive line is just not a great combination. He does like to hold the ball longer, and it leads to plays like this where, he takes unnecessary hits or unnecessary movement patterns that he could have avoided if he just throws it. Turf toe. So actually, this is a great question coming off of Brock Purdy's info. So more so in terms of Joe Burrow's, because it requires surgery, it's a higher grade injury. The good news for Joe Burrow is that it's his left foot. Most of the implications regarding left foot, since he's a right-handed thrower, left foot, in his throwing mechanics, he's mostly going to have his left foot planted flat, not placing a ton of pressure through his first ray. It's more so going to be in his dropbacks and then scrambling and pocket navigation. That's where I would find the risk, just in movement ability. And again, he holds onto the ball longer. His O-line is not that great. So he's going to have to scramble once he returns. I'm a little skeptical that Joe Burrow is going to be able to play or return this year. He hasn't even had surgery yet. Someone asked that actually as well. Why hasn't he had surgery? Most likely to get swelling down, pain down, minimize inflammation going into surgery. Your outcomes are a lot better. And he's probably working a little bit on range, joint mobility, etc. So that's actually a good thing if it's delayed even by a week. I just have a gut feeling that he will not return for 2025. I don't really have huge concerns. I don't have any long-term concerns entering into 2026. I would if this was to his right foot. Mostly because, again, the mechanics of utilizing your big toe, your first ray, and your throwing mechanics, I would have more concerns there from a throwing ability standpoint. Scrambling, he might have some regression, but it really shouldn't limit him long term. It'll be fixed. Everything will be mechanically back in, sound. So it should be fine. Minimal long-term concerns. And Brock, if Brock Purdy's, because I think it's to his right side based on those reports, there's still a chance it's to his left. Very low concern if it's to his left. Right side, because it's a mild sprain, I honestly don't really have huge concerns because he'll wear a plate probably for a month and then take it out, and it should be pretty well healed by then. What do you make of the BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. wrist injury? Honestly, I'm not really concerned about it. I mean, that's hard to say because I obviously don't know all the details. They're not going to tell us, for all we know, he could have a TFCC, some cartilage damage that requires surgery or something down the road. But again, that's so hard to know what exactly is going on. It's most likely just a mild sprain. It shouldn't impact him. If anything, go watch Matt Harmon's video. He did a panic meter on Brian Thomas Jr. Great content from Matt Harmon there. Most of the concern is this, how much effort is he giving? Liam Cohen had a great conversation apparently with him. But honestly, there was that one throw, week 1, again to the left hash. Trevor Lawrence kind of threw a hospital ball and he got decked by the safety. And ever since then, he's been a little scared of contact, which understandable. Any receiver is gonna be like that. You often see that from a lot of receivers. They shy away a little bit from contact because they don't want to get drilled again. That does not feel good. So the hope is just from a mental standpoint. It's hard to simulate in practice because you never know how these guys are going to react. it's almost like PTSD. You never know when you're going to react when you're back in that scenario or setting. So the hope is he can kind of get over that. The hard part is Trevor Lawrence throws those balls. So hopefully this is not a long-term concern. But like Matt Harmon said, basically watch for any red flags. Don't panic yet, but keep an eye on it and go from there. Thoughts on Emeka Egbuka? I think his injury, I was watching the game, and it was actually on his touchdown. It looked like he took the defender's knee right to his left thigh. And he did pop up on the injury report with a hip quad injury. I honestly, he did not participate today. I honestly think it's more of a contusion, pain ordeal. Once swelling goes down, stiffness, you ever get hit by a ball or something, it stiffens up, it hardens, it's hard to move, painful afterwards. I would not be surprised if he's a limited or full participant tomorrow on Thursday. And I do expect him to play this week with minimal limitations. If that's the case, if I'm right on the injury, I think that's going to be the most likely outcome that plays out through Friday, Saturday. He was able to finish the game. It seemed like more of a contusion than an actual strain. Lad McConkey, his injury is interesting because very rarely do you see just an isolated bicep injury. Anytime I see bicep, again, maybe it's my bias dealing with throwing athletes, but you always just wonder, the bicep here, it wraps up into the shoulder joint and hooks in and attaches to your labrum. So anytime you see like bicep, is there something going on with the shoulder, something that would create fasciculations or spasms or anything? Or is it just an isolated bicep strain? Maybe something happened as a receiver, maybe when he was reaching out or something, his bicep strained a little bit, muscle belly strained. He is one that honestly, I don't have a ton of information. It's kind of rare to see. It shouldn't limit him if it's a mild strain. Obviously, if it's higher grade, he's probably going to be did not participate tomorrow, and then I would start to grow in concern. But as of right now, most likely hopefully it's just soreness. The problem is, again, Greg Branos always talks about this with Jim Harbaugh. It's like you never know what you're going to get from an injury standpoint from Jim Harbaugh. Oh, he probably already gave a press conference. I haven't looked at the Coach Speak Index Discord, which if you haven't join that. Great information. It's always like, oh, so-and-so is going through something. Like, oh, thanks, Jim. Thank you for that information. Very helpful. Most likely he's going to say that about Ladd, but hopefully the biceps it's just so interesting because it's very rare to see an isolated injury like that. Hopefully it's nothing. Tajay Spears, is Tajay Spears worth stashing? So I actually pulled up, I saw this. This is a great comment. Tajay Spears is one of those running backs that from an injury standpoint, he is one of the highest injury risk profiles out there. I have such a hard time rostering him because you kind of know he's going to get injured, and he already got injured. He's already dealing with a high ankle sprain, and it was a high grade. So didn't require tightrope surgery, but higher grade. So, there's a little more concern there, and there's the likely production dip, especially given his skill set. He likes to be evasive, elusive, lateral cuts, change of direction, high ankle sprains typically limit those abilities. However, I want to say because of the injury and because of how he's viewed right now, I would say it's very league dependent. If Tajay Spears is out there, if in redraft if he's out there, just grab him off waivers, especially if you have a spot, grab him because Tony Pollard has looked subpar. But again, this whole Tennessee offense has looked very bad for the first few weeks. Offensive line has been bad. Tony Pollard has a 0% explosive run rate. He has 44.7% stuff rate. This information is from Fantasy Points Data, another great subscription if you don't have it. Tony Pollard missed tackles forced per attempt, 0.08. It's whatever, it's subpar production. And I think Tajay Spears, he is so explosive when healthy. Again, the main concern is he's never healthy. So he's one of those guys where if he's cheap enough in your league, he's worth reaching out to about and just see, maybe even get him thrown in, like a throw-in in another deal for some other player. But if he's out there, stash him because Tony Pollard, I think Spears can beat out Pollard from a production standpoint. Let's see. Dallas Goedert. What do we know besides knee sprain. Not much aside from knee sprain. And I think it's just that all the indications have been mild knee sprain that might cost him a week. It did cost him a week. He did return to practice today, limited participation, so he was back. And I do think he has a very good chance to play week 3. And I'm very curious, Grant Calcaterra, he is just awful. I'm surprised he's the tight end too. His blocking's bad. He's not a great receiver. I don't necessarily think the tight end target share can be viewed similarly there between Calcaterra and Goedert. So I'm curious when Goedert's back in if the target share is sticky from Goedert being on the field and how they utilize him. I think he had 7 catches for 44 yards, if my memory serves correctly, in week 1. But again, it may have been coverage. As we know, the Cowboys played, I'm pretty sure 100% zone coverage and really locked down A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Jalen Hurts isn't playing all that great right now. He didn't even throw for 100 yards last game. So who knows if it's coverage-wise, if it's just utilization from this new OC. The new OC has not looked all that great. They're not using a ton of play action, movement, but Goedert's utilization was pretty strong week 1. So if that's sticky, I would want to bet on acquiring him right now if there's any injury discount, because I do think this knee sprain won't necessarily be a huge problem, and that he's going to produce fairly well in week 3. So acquire if he's available. What should we expect from Chris Godwin when he returns? Full speed right away? ? No. Chris Godwin. Oh, so a lot of people have also asked, hey, Chris Godwin's practicing. Is that a good sign? No, not necessarily. I'm surprised people are still asking this question because it's been well known for maybe just to me and several other people just because we're tracking injuries closely. But the team has already said Chris Godwin was pulled off PUP. He's not going to practice until week 2. He practiced. Well, he's practicing just to be able to get in-game simulation reps, essentially, because he missed all preseason. And they didn't want to keep him on PUP. If he was kept on PUP, he wouldn't have been able to practice with the team. So they want him getting those reps with the team, which makes sense for when he's actually ready to play. But they've already said they don't plan on Chris Godwin playing until at least week 5. And that's at a minimum. So could be week 5, could be longer. Could be week 6, could be week 8. We don't know yet. From all that, I'm not anticipating 100% Chris Godwin until 2026. These injuries are brutal. I don't think we need to overthink this one. Even though if he gets that slot utilization back, it puts him in advantageous matchups with the defense. So he could actually produce a somewhat decent floor for PPR, but I'm anticipating very low ceiling, like nothing like last season when he was producing really well. I think he was averaging wide receiver 2 numbers or something like that. Wide receiver 2 overall numbers when healthy. I just don't. He had a tightrope procedure, deltoid ligament repair, fractured fibula, which is part of the tightrope, and 2 surgeries. So I don't think you should expect much from Chris Godwin this year, and really be aiming for 2026. My hope is, because Emeka Egbuka's numbers have not been all that strong. A lot of people are hyping him up. I think he's getting a little overpriced now. Wouldn't hurt trying to sell in Dynasty, just given costs. Again, that's so hard to say because he's doing exactly what we wanted him to do from a production standpoint. But again, his utilization's not all that strong. Baker's playing decently, but the offense overall has not been all that great. And then Chris Godwin will come onto the field. Even if he's not producing, he's going to be taking targets and reducing Egbuka's production. So there's also the argument, Chris Godwin being on the field, Mike Evans also on the field, might give Egbuka better matchups. I think it's going to be distributed way too much once Chris Godwin returns. And price-wise, I always look at these things like price-wise comparisons. I mean, if you can turn Egbuka into, I don't know, Dwan Achan or Quinshon Judkins or someone who's probably they're going to produce a lot more down the road. I wouldn't hate the pivot there. So just I mean, those are 2 examples just randomly off the top of my head. Obviously, there's better examples out there of who you could turn Egbuka into there. I've seen some really good trades on Dynasty Daddy. So I just look into price-wise and see what you can turn Egbuka into. Is Brandon Aiyuk worth stashing? You're asking the wrong person here. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Niners. And I know that's going to come off as bias. People know I love Brandon Aiyuk. I am a Matt Harmon follower, reception perception follower. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best wide receivers in the game, in the league, from a blocking standpoint, from a route running standpoint. The downside is he has never gotten consistent production from the 49ers outside of the year 2023 when all cylinders were firing. Last year, a little bit of an aberration. He missed all that time in camp. Rapport was thrown off. Purdy wasn't trusting him fully, even though Aiyuk was getting wide open. And he had a massive game against Arizona, I think like 150 yards, 10 catches or 9 catches, something like that. And then the injury. So he is looking really good. I honestly, based on videos alone, movement that I've seen from Brandon Aiyuk, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if once he's active, either week 5 or week 6. So for the Niners, he's eligible to come off PUP after week 4, so week 5. The Rams game, the Niners play the Rams week 5 on Thursday night. So there's speculation they may want to give him extra time. That gives him like 10 extra days if he's not active week 5. I honestly think he's going to be ready to go. I'm really curious how conservative they're going to be. If they wait until week 6, I believe it puts him right up against 11 months out, which is a pretty conservative time frame for ACL, MCL surgery. So I'll just be curious on what the Niners are going to do. Honestly, can't guess what they're going to do. We'll just have to wait and see after week 4. But if he's out there, or if there's any kind of injury discount, I know people love Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall, if you've seen the numbers right now, he's barely earning more targets than like Jake Tongas on a per route run standpoint, which everyone's probably like, who the heck is Jake Tongas? Juwan Jennings looks like the wide receiver 1, but again, I'm just so I don't think he's a true wide receiver 1. He fits the scheme well, production wise, but I truly believe from a skill set standpoint, winning on all 3 points of the field or levels of the field, I do think Brandon Aiyuk can be the wide receiver 1 for the Niners as early as maybe week 10 this season. So I would keep stashing him and just see what the production looks like. And then by then, Brock Purdy will likely be fully healthy. And honestly, if he's not, Mac Jones looked pretty good. So I think the Niners will be going to be fine from a quarterback standpoint. But yeah, I would keep stashing Aiyuk. Thoughts on Christian Kirk's injury and how he could fare this week? This is actually a really good question because another injury happened from week 2. Justin Watson, who was seeing significantly too many targets or snaps for Houston, he was actually in the slot role instead of giving that to Jalen Noel for whatever reason. Justin Watson was out there. And Justin Watson suffered a calf Achilles injury, not required surgery, but he has been placed on IR just in time for Christian Kirk to come back and practice. And it does sound like Christian Kirk's going to play week 3. I do think for his age and how much time he's missed, he's still going to be a high re-injury risk coming off the hamstring injury, especially with how much time he's missed. Probably close to 25-30% re-injury risk. So I'll be curious to watch that and watching that really closely. The hope here in Houston is that I do think if Christian Kirk is able to stay healthy for this season, he is going to be that wide receiver 2 target and honestly fits that role really well, where I think Stroud in camp and preseason, Stroud was building a lot of rapport for him and he was kind of the safety valve. I think Kirk is going to be a sneaky value here. Like a redraft, if someone dropped him, if he's available, stash him, pick him up now. In Dynasty, if you can get him a little cheap, just as like a filler, if you need bye week filler, or just a very cheap back end roster option, try to acquire him just for really cheap or like a throw in a deal. But I do think he's going to be one of the favored targets opposite. He'll probably help Nico Collins, to be honest, because for whatever reason, the offensive line has been bad, the play calling has been bad, but Xavier Hutchinson and Justin Watson on the field have not helped Nico Collins at all. Nico needs a strong second target to draw attention away. And Jaden Higgins has been really good. Actually, looking at fantasy points data, the route win percentage, Jaden Higgins is pretty far up there, actually. So I'm just surprised he's not on the field more. But, man, Houston really needs Christian Kirk on the field, and I think it's going to help Nico as well. Asked about Emeka. let's see. Just scrolling through these just to make sure I didn't miss any on this first one. Let me refresh. Sorry for the delay. Xavier Worthy. What are your thoughts, concern level for Worthy this week and rest of season? So I saw a comment just before I started recording on this. Andy Reid said that there is a very good chance, well, he said no limitations on Xavier Worthy in practice, or Jalen Royals, who Andy Reid keeps calling Jalen Rose, so that's interesting. I don't know if Royals will actually see a significant workload. He's worth a stash, but honestly, once Rashee Rice comes back, I don't really want any of these guys, even Worthy, to be honest, given the cost. I don't really want Worthy. I want Rashee Rice out of this offense. I do think Xavier Worthy has a very good chance to play this week based on everything Kansas City has said. But given the severity of the injury, and if the reports are true that he really does have a fully torn labrum, I think that the re-injury risk is significantly high. Even with the brace on, they'll use a harness for stability, joint stability. But if he takes another big hit, if he lands with his arm outstretched and gets forced up, I think there's a high risk for another subluxation or dislocation, or at least pain that limits Worthy. There could be some receiving ability limitations. He's in practice. He's working on receptions. Hopefully he's working on overhead stuff where he has to put his arm in positions where it's just, it's hard to simulate in game. But he's gonna be dealing with jams from DBs. He's gonna have to work on hand technique. All things that could put him at risk for another dislocation or pain. So my concern, I would not want to play Worthy this week if he's active week 3. I want to see how he produces, which is painful because he could wind up going out there and scoring, 15 points off of like 40% of the snaps. So it's just use your best judgment, go with your gut, assess your own risk level. I think there's high risk here. And for me personally, if I had Worthy on my roster, I would want to see him produce first, get through a game to see how many snaps he's actually playing, and does he avoid any re-injury in that game before even putting him in my starting roster. I already talked about Brandon Aiyuk a little bit, but this is a good question. I think I answered it, but just in case. When do we expect Aiyuk to come back, and when do we think he'll be at full strength or at least be able to plug in our lineups? I think he's going to be back either week 5 or week 6. I lean week 6 because of how conservative the Niners have been, but honestly, they could use him week 5 if he's able to, just from an offensive standpoint. Although at that point, they will still have, as long as they all still stay healthy, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, and Demarcus Robinson will be active at that point. Robinson will be coming off the suspension after this week 3. So there's still not necessarily a need to rush Aiyuk, but honestly, Aiyuk is probably the most talented one out of that bunch, both from a run game standpoint, blocking. He's right up there with Juwan Jennings, just super strong and help the run game a ton as wide receiver positions, and then also receiving ability. Plugging into your lineups, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable, again, unless he absolutely dominates week 5, week 6, week 7, first couple games back. I probably won't feel comfortable starting Aiyuk until like week 9, week 10, when I've seen him play a little bit and just see how he's looking in the rhythm of the offense because of how much time he's missed. Oh, sorry. I thought they were asking Xavier Worthy, but may not be video worthy, but what's the extent of the Josh Downs and Tyler Warren concern? I would say, sorry, I was processing that question just because there's some spelling errors. Josh Downs, he's dealing with, I'm not overly concerned on his ankle sprain. The team doesn't seem too concerned, but he's going to be one. I don't have a ton of information, but he's going to be one to watch the practice report and just see level of the sprain itself. I'm hoping he gets a limited participation in at least this Thursday, tomorrow. And then Tyler Warren, we never like seeing toe injuries, especially, we always joke about injuries coming in pairs of 3, or pairs 2, in bunches of 3. So my hope is this isn't turf toe for Tyler Warren. That would be problematic if it was. But again, same situation, Josh Downs. we'll have to watch the injury report. I really don't know. I wish I had an answer on that because I have Tyler Warren in a couple of leagues, and I've been playing him as my tight end 1 ever since I lost Kittle. So hopefully he plays, but we'll really have to lean on the practice report for that. Aiyuk, Kittle. George Kittle. I didn't talk on George Kittle because this person asked Red Zone All Day, asked about Aiyuk and Kittle return schedule and their rest of season value for 12-team PPR leagues. George Kittle, it's really disappointing that he suffered the hamstring strain because I think he played, I don't even know how many snaps, maybe 20? Maybe not even. I think it was the first drive he got injured on, or second drive that he got injured on. So I think he played like 15% of the snaps in the game, and he had, 13 points? He had a touchdown, 20-something yards, whatever. I honestly think George Kittle was in line for a massive season, and I truly hope this hamstring strain, because it really didn't look like much on the field. He was just blocking, and it's a moderate sprain that put him on IR. So, or strain, sorry, not a sprain. So I'm really hoping Kittle is able to return. I think they're slow playing it given his age and severity. Once he returns, he is eligible to come off IR, I believe, week 6. So once he returns, I am pretty. Actually, it should be week 5. No, yeah, week 6. Missing week 2 through week 5. I am pretty optimistic. I honestly think volume-wise, his splits with Debo in and out of the lineup, and obviously Debo's not with the Niners anymore. His splits are, his production is astronomical. So he's going to be a key cog in the passing attack, and I think that was the game plan. They're going to return. Again, Kyle Shanahan, everyone gives him a hard time from an injury standpoint. Once his players are healthy and back to play, they are thrown right back into their role. So it's not like George Kittle is going to be eased into his role. They're not going to keep giving Jake Tonjes snaps over George Kittle. That would be ridiculous. So I do think production-wise, he's going to return top 3 value like he was set to. So if there's any injury discount on him, I would try to acquire. And if whatever reason someone got impatient in redraft, people do stupid things in redraft. If someone dropped him, pick him up immediately. Okay. Evan Ingram's injuries. Are Evan Ingram's injuries serious? Is this why he isn't seeing a lot of snaps? Loaded question, to be honest. I don't think... So, Evan Ingram is dealing with a calf injury, and it's a calf contusion, I believe. He was hit directly into the calf from the defender's cleat. And that creates more of a bruising, painful bruising. And I think that's why he was able to play week 2. But again, I don't think this is injury related. I think they're having a hard time getting him into a role that they want to fill. And I think that role is getting split between Evan Ingram and Pat Bryant and maybe a little bit of Marvin Mims. So I honestly, I actually posted something today on Twitter. If you have Evan Ingram, I would want to get off of Evan Ingram. If you can pivot, if there's even a chance you can still pivot, if someone still values him as a top 10 tight end, top 15 tight end. I pivoted for Evan Ingram plus a 4th for Juwan Johnson. And that I probably got him too cheap. That was after week 1. Week 2 happened. I probably wouldn't have gotten him that cheap. And then Evan Ingram and what did I trade? Evan Ingram, Hollywood Brown for a 2026 second and Brenton Strange, which I felt very good about. I shouldn't have gotten that deal done. But I would do a straight swap. Evan Ingram for Brenton Strange, Evan Ingram for Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram for Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram for Isaiah Likely. No one's asked about him. Isaiah Likely is probably going to play this week, if not next. And the hope is his production and utilization. I mean, Mark Andrews has just been awful, and their utilization of him has been awful. So Isaiah Likely would be someone if you can pivot Evan Ingram to Isaiah Likely somehow, do it. The problem is Evan Ingram played 38% of the snaps, I believe, and 43% of the snaps week 1 and week 2. And it's just, he's not getting targets. The ball is getting distributed. Troy Franklin has stepped up. They need that number 2 target. The hope was Evan Ingram would take that, and he has not. Troy Franklin has. I don't want Evan Ingram at all for this season. And I had a lot of Evan Ingram. I think I had him in like 80% of my leagues going into week 1. So that's been pretty painful. Bad bet. Hold Joe Burrow on IR spot or drop. I'm assuming this is redraft and not dynasty. I would say in redraft, why not for right now? But the minute someone else suffers an injury and goes on IR, that's like more short term. Just say, I don't even want to put this out there, but just say one of your players suffers an injury and goes on, like Aaron Jones suffers an injury, goes on IR. We know Aaron Jones is going on there for 4 to 5 weeks. I would drop Joe Burrow and put Aaron Jones in your 1 IR spot. Joe Burrow is most likely not returning this season. And Dynasty, obviously, please don't drop Joe Burrow. If you do that, you should not be playing Dynasty. I think... Oh, another good question. Regardless of whether he plays this week, how long until Jaden Daniels is back to full strength? Is this a lingering re-injury risk thing? So, by video, it looked like this may be a PCL sprain, which I know that's on the brain for everybody. That's happened. Brock Bowers, someone else that I'm blanking on right now. I don't think this is going to be a long-term thing, but Jaden Daniels, I do think Dan Quinn has already said they're going to be very conservative with Jaden Daniels. They're going to play it safe with Jaden Daniels. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to play week 3. He's not even going to practice until Friday. They're gonna wait until Friday to practice Jaden Daniels and just see how he does. My guess is he's going to be out, and they're going to roll with Marcus Mariota for week 3. Which, if you need a quarterback and Marcus Mariota is available, I think maybe not last year, but 2023, there were 2 games where he scored 31 and 33 points. At least in the league I was looking in, that may have been 6-point touchdown pass scoring settings, but. Either way, Data Roma on X actually posted, I think, some good information. I think it was Data Roma. Another great follow if you're not following him. Him and Ryan Heath and Jacob Gibbs. Follow them if you're not already. Marcus Mariota actually scored pretty... He did a decent job. Honestly, I think it's the system. Cliff Kingsbury knows how to produce for fantasy, at least. Even though we don't like the utilization of Terry McLaurin being on one side of the field. Be nice if he moved him around. But yeah, if you need a quarterback, Marcus Mariota, I think, is very intriguing. Like, I would rather take Marcus Mariota than Tyrod Taylor. Justin Fields is out this week. Tyrod Taylor is going to start. I would rather take Marcus Mariota, I think. It'd be a coin flip between Marcus Mariota and Carson Wentz, mostly because I'm a little intrigued in Carson Wentz given Kevin O'Connell. That's the only reason. Last time we saw Carson Wentz start a game was week 18 for Kansas City, and we know Kansas City's scheme is pretty good, and he was awful. I think he only completed maybe 11 attempts were completed in that game that he played, I believe, or 10 of 18 or something like that. He was awful. So, again, Kevin O'Connell, he did a lot with Sam Darnold. J.J. McCarthy looked pretty bad. But that'd be a coin flip. Marcus Mariota, I think Mariota probably has a little more rushing upside for fantasy purposes. So that'd be tempting to go Mariota if you needed a quarterback. I would probably go, Mac Jones over Mariota, just given the uncertainty and, Mac Jones looked pretty good in San Francisco's scheme. And again, Arizona's defense is obliterated right now. So would be tempting to do that, but at least if you needed someone like cheap DFS play, I'll probably throw in a couple cheap Marcus Mariota options just because you can load up on other positions, and he at least offers a tempting floor from a rushing standpoint. I think let's see. C-Mine110 asked, do you assume Aiyuk can come back and be his full self at any point this season, or should I be looking to sell at this point? Positive news window. I already talked on that one. I do think he's going to return value. Adam Hutchinson and myself posted some good information, which it's actually we're getting proved wrong right now on Stephon Diggs, but I think that's other issues utilization wise. Josh McDaniels' offense. Rapport with Drake May, and possibly, honestly, Diggs' age might be too soon. But he hasn't been playing well. Diggs hasn't been playing well. But Aiyuk actually fits that prototype wide receiver that can come back and play well. More like tacticians, route runners. They're good technique in their route running ability, and good scheme and offense that they're returning to, that they're familiar with. So I'd be tempted to say I do honestly believe Aiyuk can produce good value in year one. 2026 is obviously going to be better than what he can do this year. But I think he's going to pay off at cost. I mean, in drafts, he was going as like wide receiver 52, I think, by August. So I think he's going to produce decently. May not be right away. Probably won't be right away. But I honestly believe by like week 10, week 9, week 10, that we're looking at a lot better production out of Brandon Aiyuk. I think that's it. Someone asked about Tyler Warren. I already talked on him. We'll have to watch for injury reports on that. Practice reports Thursday and Friday. I think that is it. So hopefully this is good information. Sorry if you had to watch the whole thing to watch your question get answered, but hopefully that was good, and have a good night.